Welcome to the place where we learn about improv, 'cause public speaking can take you so far. Improvly speaking, say yes and flex your creative thinking. Improvly speaking, say yes and flex your creative thinking.
All right, and welcome everyone to the Improvly Speaking podcast. I am so excited that you're joining today. I'm your host, Dana Gowan, and listen, we're going to go down a little bit of a parenting avenue and route today. I have mentioned it already, and at the point that this comes out, I think little baby girl will probably be here. So I'm excited to have on a fellow parent to talk all about parenting and how improv shows up in parenting life, which it definitely does, for sure. Let me give you the rundown if you are new, joining for the first time. On this podcast, I like to interview a wide variety of guests, from experienced improvisers and speakers, people who take improv classes for fun, and also people who may use improv skills in their daily life, but don't think about it as improv. And today's guest probably doesn't consider himself as a quote-unquote improviser, at least on stage, but he is a parent, more specifically a girl dad and podcast host, so he definitely uses improv in his daily life. So without further ado, let me introduce you to our special guest today, Matthew Krekeler. Matthew is based in the Denver, Colorado area. He is the proud father of 3 daughters, Kaylee, Nora, and Maggie. His oldest just turned 5, which is so cute. Yay. He is the host of the Girl Dad Nation podcast, where he interviews other dads with daughters and shares inspiring stories and hacks from his own experience as a girl dad. He and his wife, Becca, have been happily married for over 8 years and are journeying through the challenges and many joys of raising their family while both working full-time and having a podcast too. And I'll add, Becca has also been a guest on the Girl Dad Nation podcast and helps with the podcast as well. Matthew went to film school at Santa Fe University of Art and Design and has been working in video production for over 11 years now. He knows and loves all aspects of filmmaking, but his main focus has been in post-production. He is currently senior post-production manager for Augustine Institute Studios, where he has been for over 9 years. In that time, the production studio has won 20 Telly Awards, which is really impressive. His hobbies include board games, hockey, juggling, and stand-up comedy. But his greatest love of all is being a dad. Oh, that's so sweet. Please welcome the magnificent, meticulous, and incredibly motivated Matthew Krekeler. Welcome, Matthew.
Dana, thank you so much for having me on your show. It's an honor to be on your podcast.
It is an honor to have you on. I don't think I have a ton of podcast hosts on, or at least yet, so I'm excited to have on a fellow host, too. It's exciting.
Yeah, well, I'm a fan of Improvly Speaking. I listen to your podcast and it inspires me. So it's cool to talk to another podcaster.
And it's more fun, I think, to be a guest on another podcast because you don't have to do the edits now. Isn't that a joy?
That's true. Yeah, that's what I was looking forward to most, is just getting to sit back and talk without having to edit.
Right. Well, I want to tell our listeners a little bit about how we met because it's actually a really fun story, I think. So I posted a question on, of all places, the Buzzsprout Facebook group about merchandise. I was starting up my Pod Mom swag and merch, and I was trying to figure out the best ways to promote it. So I just threw out a question. And by the way, if you are thinking of starting a podcast, or you have a podcast, you have a friend who has a podcast, the Buzzsprout Facebook group is so awesome. It has so many people in there that help answer questions. And so I threw out this question and Matthew responded and we just started chatting. on Facebook Messenger and kind of turned into like a pod swap, like swapping stories and episodes and swag. And I will share, I now have the Girl Dad Nation magnet on my fridge, which I love.
Thanks. Yeah. And on my fridge, I've got an Improvly Speaking magnet. So it's cool podcasters supporting podcasters.
I love it. Yeah. It's really been fun to have a pod friend, I will say. And also, I will say timing is everything. So we started chatting around January. And so I was pregnant at the time, but I hadn't really told anyone. And so I hadn't really heard of Girl Dad Nation either, or I was still kind of just getting over the idea that I was going to be a parent. And so I'm like, oh, there are parenting podcasts out there. That's awesome. But I will say, I really convinced myself that I was going to have a boy. Like, I was just convinced. I know I'm going to have a boy. And so I was like, well, Girl Dad Nation's cool, but I'm going to have a boy. So I'll listen to it. I'll check it out, but I'll find the boy moms type of thing. Well, I was wrong. We got the results about mid-January that baby G is actually a girl and not a boy. And so then I was like, oh, Girl Dad Nation is definitely for me. Of course, it's not just for girl dads, but this is definitely up my avenue now.
Yeah. Well, I always say like one of the greatest blessings is having a daughter. And so I've been blessed with 3 daughters. I absolutely love it. I wear the Girl Dad title very proudly and love connecting with other dads of daughters. It's nothing against dads or moms of boys. I would welcome a son just as much. But because I've been blessed with girls, I love sharing just how having girls has just blessed my life and ways to inspire my daughters to live the best life that they can. So congrats to you, Dana. You are in for just so many wonderful things in the future. Yeah, it's going to be amazing. It's completely life-changing, but in all the best ways.
Thank you. That's what I hear. All the many ups and downs. And I liked how you phrased it in your bio, the challenges and joys of parenting and having a family. It's very special. And, I got to ask you, so, you have 3 kids. I think what I saw is you started the podcast in January 2022, or at least that was when the first episode was released and came out. So what made you want to start the Girl Dad Nation podcast in the first place?
Yeah, well, around that time, it was very interesting because we kind of went through COVID and just how that changed life for a lot of people. I had been at my job for a while. I love what I do. I work in video production. And so I have like a media background, which I love, but I wanted something that I had more ownership of and to be able to create and to be able to connect and network with the people that mattered most to me, topics that I wanted to talk about. And being a new dad, this was a whole new world for me. And I looked at my own network, coworkers, friends, and then even beyond my immediate circle at people that I was inspired by, and not just them in their career choices, but people all across the board, regardless of career, background, etc. But what really connected them was their love for their daughters. And I was really inspired by the way that they were building these strong relationships with their daughters and wanting to just learn as much as I can about building that like in my own family. So I started reaching out to friends and then looking beyond that, connecting with other people and trying to collect all these stories for myself, but then putting it in a podcast form to be able to share those things with so many other dads of daughters as well. And not just dads of daughters, that's kind of my target, but I've gotten like great feedback from other people that have just listened to the show and yeah, just been inspired by the different stories that people tell. There's a lot of stories of those ups and downs that apply to so many aspects of life. One of my first guests, he was homeless for 10 years and turned his life around. Now he started a homeless shelter and like he had now older kids, but then with his youngest daughter, he had the second chance basically to be a dad and be involved as a parent. And so he kind of shares both of those stories. So yeah, I've been very blessed to meet and connect with so many amazing people.
I love that. And I will share, I've listened to a few episodes and you did have your wife, Becca, on too to talk about a really personal episode. This was, I think, at least it came out little over a year ago now at the time that we're recording, but she shared about her postpartum depression struggles. And I mean, honestly, I just want to say thank you to her for sharing and being vulnerable on the podcast. And I listened to it recently and I was like, okay, like I am trying to like curate and collect my team of help, like a therapist and a pelvic floor specialist. And I mean, I'm a trainer and like all these things just to like help be part of the team after baby comes. And then hearing her story, it's like, oh my gosh, it's so real. And people certainly highlight the highs and the joys of having a baby. And then the baby's there and you're like, what do I do now? And I just really appreciated her sharing and being vulnerable. I mean, that's really important.
Thank you. Yeah, those episodes with my wife just mean the most to me, I think, like in all of the episodes that I've done. I think I've released over 60 episodes now. And
Wow.
the ones with my wife really are special because we just get candid about our experience. And postpartum depression was one of those areas that was completely new to me. And something that thankfully like I learned about through a dad class before we went to the hospital. So it was kind of in the back of my mind, but you wouldn't necessarily expect it to happen to your family. And yeah, some just very difficult conversations, but very important conversations like after the baby was born to talk about what those needs were and getting help in those areas and yeah, just being able to support each other. So yeah, I really love that episode with her. Yeah, together through all of this, like we've been a really great team. And I just am so thankful for her, just for the support of me in this podcast. And then the way that like we've been able to grow as a couple through this like completely new journey together as parenting.
That's so sweet. And she helps with the podcast too, right? Does she help produce it or help on the back end?
I do credit her as the executive producer of the podcast and my kids. Because without
Yes.
her, like the whole Girl Dad Nation would not exist. But
Very true.
But I do run the podcast pretty much solo. This has just kind of been my own passion project. So I do all the editing, recording, and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, but she's always like supportive of that. And then we have great conversations afterwards where I'll say, hey, like I had this guest on the show and this was a cool story that I learned. And so yeah, she's very much a part of it, even though not as hands-on with the with the technical operations. Like I would love if I had another editor to go through the podcast with me, but she has many, many other jobs. And so I purposely do not burden her with some of the editing and stuff of the podcast.
Okay, yeah, I had heard you say she's the executive producer, so it's nice she gets credited for that and also for, executive producer of the kids, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good credit at the end. I love that. And I have a selfish question for you. So we are recording this on May 31st, 2024. I'm just going to say when we're recording, my production team, aka me, takes some time to get the episodes out. Baby girl will probably be here. She is due July 30th or 31st, so in 2 months. And I'm a little nervous about keeping the podcast going, or at least, the momentum going. So my selfish question for you is, how do you keep a podcast going when you have a kid or multiple kids?
If possible, teach your kids how to edit. No, but yeah, you have to make it for you first. I think anything that you do, especially if it's a passion project, like you're not necessarily getting paid for it. Unfortunately, at this point in my podcast journey, I haven't been able to quit my day job yet. So you first have to do it for you. And whenever I've had guests on my show or been a guest on a show like your podcast, I have to first look forward to it and book people and have conversations that like are edifying for me and then find the nooks and crannies to do all the other legwork like editing, posting, marketing. and that for me is a little bit more challenging, like that kind of stuff.
Same.
But it's great. too, because I edit my own podcast, I get to re-listen to the conversations. And I listen to myself make mistakes and stumble and say too many times. And that's awesome too many times, which is kind of a catchphrase
I
of
love
mine.
that. Yes.
But yeah, then also re-listening to the conversations just re-inspires me too and reminds me of those cool points when down the line, like, yeah, it might have been a couple weeks since the episode was first recorded. And that's really cool. So that's what I would say is find ways to keep motivated, find ways that inspire you. And if it's something you love, you'll find the time to do it.
Well, it was technically my first baby, my pod baby, my little baby podcast. Just taking on the project felt like such an endeavor, and I was so proud of it. A baby or, like child, like I really considered it my like pet project kind of thing. So now we'll just have a little baby podcast and an actual baby to take care of.
Yeah.
And it'll be fun.
I think in podcasting, there's more resources available in a way. There's great
Very
articles
true.
online. You could get a team to help you with it. You could sign up for something like Buzzsprout, which we both use, which is great. And so, yeah, in a lot of ways, there's all these supporters to help you out on that pod mom or pod dad journey. Sometimes with kids, yeah, the resources aren't as obvious and you're kind of thrown into it without as much support sometimes. But that's why I love like what I do with my podcast and reaching out to other parenting podcasters and people that have parenting resources, because the resources are out there if you look for them. And just like anything, the podcast was important to you, so you find the resources you need. Parenting should be viewed as like the same way. This is a new job, a new opportunity, a new responsibility. And one of the most important things that you're going to do, even if it doesn't quite get the same attention as something like a podcast, it really matters. And so taking the time to find those things to support you in that journey is going to make all the difference.
Very well said. And it may not get the attention, like you said, of a podcast, but I would say and argue that it is, like you said, the most important journey of all, just like supporting a child and having their life grow and develop. And I think every parent wants to give them a better life than they had, and just have them have even better and more joyful experiences than they had. At least that's my goal. So yeah, those are some tall orders, but also achievable and doable. And I did notice that in your theme song or maybe your closing song, like you have some little sound bites of the girls on there too. So do you involve them in your podcast?
Yeah, it's an interesting relationship, like involving my girls with the podcast. I've kind of been very particular about the ways that I involve them in both the podcast and online. And it's sort of a developing thing. And I've had guests on the show that have views like from the whole spectrum, that don't post anything about their kids online. And I totally respect that. To people that I've had on the podcast who, like, a lot of their content is creating content with their kids. And I try to take like a moderate approach. The reality is, like, we live in a world that is digital and online and interconnected through the internet. So that is a reality. And eventually they will have to engage with that reality. But they are kids, and I want to be protective of them. My first responsibility is just to make sure that they are taken care of and protected and loved. And the way that I kind of approach everything is, if it's true, good, beautiful, and a way of showing love, then I am more willing to post that kind of content. And one thing that I do is at the end of every episode, I ask each one of my guests to leave a special message for their daughters as a way of directly giving a message to their kids in a way that's loving. And it's like, this is why they do what they do. And what's so cool is, again, across the board, no matter what their profession is, what their background is, each one of them professes a message of love to their kids in a way that's just very personable. And you don't really find that as much online. Like we do so many things for other people. We present a persona to get likes or follows, but at the end of the day, we are responsible first to our family, to our spouse, and then to our kids. Those are the people that will remember us long after we're gone. And that's the kind of relationships that are going to mean the most. So, yeah, with the intro, sorry, this is kind of a long answer to that, but with the intro, yes,
Keep going. Yeah.
I had the mic out and my daughter just came over and she was interested in it. And so we were just like recording songs together. I'd ask her to sing something, Itsy Bitsy Spider or whatever. And then she just got the greatest joy listening to it back. And then I asked her to say Girl Dad Nation for the intro. And so my oldest Kaylee, has this great voice for the intro. And then when Maggie came along, I might have had Maggie at the time of the first episode, but she wasn't talking. So it's just the giggling. And then, with Nora and then Maggie. So yeah. And then the ultrasound heartbeat with Maggie at the very end, which is subtle, but like a little nod to when she was born. And so depending on which episode you listen to, you'll hear the ultrasound come in probably like at the 20th episode, I think, or so when she was born. So so that's just a little nod to my girls in the intro and outro. And at the end of the episode, my daughter says, "I'm proud of you, Daddy." And that just means a lot to me. So when I'm listening to these back, because I edit them, every time I end the edit listening to my daughter as a 2-year-old say, "I'm proud of you, Daddy." So that's just meant a lot to me.
Okay, it's just the hormones that are making me tear up. And also, that's just such a sweet story, too. Oh, that's so sweet. I do struggle with the idea of like social media and how to involve her and also be very mindful. And so I'm still deciding about social media. I don't personally want to use her as a quote unquote prop, I guess. I feel like some people will use their kids as props and videos and stuff. And so I think my goal is to wait when she's older if she wants to be in it, or like you said, like she just came over and started like talking. But I do want her to know like what mommy does, and mommy does this thing that she really enjoys. Do you think your kids will listen to your episodes when they're older, or they'll want to listen? I mean, this is probably 10 plus years down the road. Do you think they'll be interested in what you're doing right now?
Yeah, I just hope they listen to me when I tell them it's time for bed and brush your teeth.
True.
But
That's a better for sure.
I'm not quite sure down the line, but I did kind of create the podcast as a way, just personally, as a personal time capsule in a way of this journey that I'm on with them as their father, trying to learn from other dads and be the best dad I can be. And so my hope is that, if they do go back and listen to these episodes, hopefully they'll live on, longer than I'm here, and a way for them to remember their dad. And in some episodes, particularly like the episode with my wife got to be host for an episode and asked me the questions. And one of the things was, what message do you have for your daughters? And so, there's special moments like that throughout the many episodes that I've done now, where I talk about my girls, where in that particular episode, I addressed them directly, said how proud I am of them, how much I love them, and just all the things that I want for them. So, I hope that whether they get an opportunity, it would be something that they would enjoy in the future.
Yeah, I think of it as a kind of a legacy piece too. And also, who knows what the digital world will bring in 10 years? We were listening to CDs, I think, maybe 15 years ago, and then iPods. And so who knows how podcasts will transform. But yeah, hopefully some version of this medium and like a way to listen is still available if they're interested in listening, right?
Yeah.
Well, and I gotta ask, so you have 3 daughters, and you are younger than me, a little bit younger than me. And I know you probably get asked this a lot, so tell me if I'm being nosy. Any plans to have more kids, or you think you're good with 3?
So the question that I get asked often is, are we trying for a boy or would you try for a boy? Especially like anytime we've announced after my second that we were pregnant again, like for our third, the question was, yeah, do you hope it's a boy? Or what if it's a boy? Do you have to give up your podcast? What about Girl Dad Nation?
Right.
And yeah, my response is always, I love my daughters and I am so blessed by my daughters. And I don't think there's anything lacking by not having sons. And I am grateful for everything that I've been given. So
Mm.
in that way, like that was one of the reasons why I wanted to start the podcast is I've seen all of these negative reactions like on social media of gender reveals, and the father just has a terrible reaction to finding out that he's having daughters or disappointment or whatever. And that was just never my experience. I've always been just very excited and so welcoming to having girls that it was sad to me to see that reaction because like, especially for those daughters, it's like, this is your dad, you know, like this is someone that you want a relationship with. And the hope would be that they would want a relationship with you. And from my experience, it's just been like such a wonderful thing. So I wanted to first encourage dads. Like it could be overwhelming for myself. Like I grew up with just a brother, so I never had like sisters or really like any experience around what it would be like to raise a girl. So it was kind of new to me. It could also be intimidating, but it's okay. Those feelings are valid, but this is an amazing thing. But then also, like, if we do have a son someday, like, I will be just as welcoming, just as excited. They'll be part of the family, part of the nation. And it would be more convenient if we were having girls just to stay on brand. But my oldest also really wants a brother. So she's been saying that for a long time. She's like, yeah, but I want a brother. And I'm like, yeah, well, I don't know. That's not in our hands. That's in God's hands. And I'm like, but don't you know that dad has like a whole brand and like this thing that we have to maintain? No. But at the same time, like I'll probably keep the podcast going. I'm still interested in raising the best daughters that I can. That's not going away. It doesn't lessen my identity as a girl dad or anything like that. So
That's sweet. My usual common response is always, I love that. And this episode, it's always, oh, that's sweet. Because everything's just so sweet with the kiddos. That it is sweet. And I will say, I mentioned that we really were convinced that we were having a boy. Like in both of our families, my husband's family and my family, it's mostly girls. So we're like, it's going to be a boy. And for me, I'm an only child. Like, I didn't have siblings, but I had a lot of girl cousins and little cousins. So I've seen little girls develop and grow up, but I haven't seen a ton of boys. I have one nephew. And so I was like, I'm going to have a boy. Just that's going to be the joke because I don't know what to do with boys. I'm going to have a boy and I'm not going to know what to do with them, blah, blah, blah. And when we found out, my husband did say that he had an inkling, a little bit of disappointment, just like for a minute of just like, oh, like he had all these visions of working on cars or going to the gym or whatever. And then immediately he snapped out of it and he was like, well, she can like working on cars and she can like going to the gym and she can like doing this stuff. Like, it doesn't mean she's going to like princesses and bows. Like, she can like whatever she wants and it'll be beautiful kind of thing. So he definitely snapped out of it quickly and he's so excited now.
yeah, absolutely. That would be my advice to any dad too, is just like you enjoy whatever your hobbies are, golfing, working on the car, etc., involve your kids in all that stuff. One of the things that I commonly do is laundry at our house. And I also, for the same reasons, sort of hate the kind of gendered like stereotypes in that kind of way. It's not to say that there isn't a difference naturally between men and women. Like I will never have the experience of childbirth. I'm grateful for that. But in the same way, like my daughters will have an opportunity to be a mother in a way that I will never go through that same experience. And that's okay. I have certain privileges and experiences as a man, certain pressures as a man that maybe is different from them. But the important thing is to recognize that everyone has a purpose and a value, and we all share in this wonderful thing called life, and to support each other. And even between my brother and I, we have different interests. And so like that's all really great too. So even if your daughter doesn't like dolls as much and prefers to be playing in the mud and all that, that's great.
Yeah.
But then also for men, you might not be particularly interested in painting nails and like playing dress up, but that might be something your daughter really enjoys. And it's so cool to see other men. It's great connecting on social media and men similar to my own situation, raising girls, and see them really embrace their daughters and be involved in their interests and support that. So I would say like, no matter what, just try to be present, involve them as much as possible. And my daughters love like learning as much as they can and being right by my side for things. So when I was fixing the car, like I had my daughter there and she had her little tool set and I had my tool set. And I would like ask for things like I need a screwdriver, I need a wrench, and then teaching her all those different terms. And then it was so cool then to see her working on her dollhouse and she got her little tool set out and was fixing it up and different things. We've also did a great project. Highly recommend this. We got an old Power Wheels car and I took the seats out of it. My daughter and I spray painted the seats and the steering wheel to make it Girl Dad Nation brand. We got this like cool green Jeep and we painted the seats pink. So it's like this green and pink Jeep. But they got to help me with that. And then we outfitted it with a drill battery. So it's got, I think, 18 volts of power with a drill battery. So the thing soars, and my daughters love driving that to the park. So that's been a really fun thing. So yeah, you can find ways definitely to inspire your kids, teach them the things that you enjoy, and just make that a great experience together.
Well, and speaking of playing with your kids and teaching them, inspiring, the whole reason I kind of had you on this podcast, one is you're a dad and a girl dad, but also just as a parent, becoming a parent soon, I've been thinking a lot about how the skills of improv that I've cultivated over the past few years should, and I hope, will help me when I become a parent. And I think they will. And I'm just curious to hear your experience as a non-improviser, but you hear the skills of improv, yes and, listening, letting go of perfection, being flexible, having playfulness. Do you see yourself using those a lot as a parent? And maybe you don't even think about it, but you just automatically do it as a parent.
Absolutely. I'd say that's a parenting superpower. If you can unlock that, is using that yes and mindset and all of those things that you listed, being flexible, listening, going with suggestions, adding your own take on things, not being too focused on the specifics or like getting caught up in your own head sometimes, and just allowing for that playfulness is great. So I would say absolutely, as a parent, that's been like one of the greatest joys, is to like really engage with my kids. And they're at this age where their imagination is just taking off. And so it's, hey, we want to do dress up. And it's yes, and I'll paint your nails, or and let's do a tea party. And then they're like, oh my goodness, that's amazing. And one of the things that's great is my daughters love playing burrito shop. And so they'll take all of the dish towels out of the drawer, and then at least like the two older ones will play burrito shop, and they'll take the dish towels and roll them up in burritos. and they created this whole backstory. There's like Abuelita that started the burrito shop, and you pick up on certain things. And one of the lines from the burrito shop was, "Oh, quick, Nora, we need to get a burrito. Abuelita needs a burrito for her road trip to see God." And I was like,
of course she does.
Because did Abuelita pass away? This is her one last burrito for the road to heaven kind of thing. So yeah, it's just been such a joy to hear all those different phrases, and yeah, try to be a good listener with all of that. Yeah, such a great skill to have, is just to allow yourself to have that improv mindset.
I think about the times and experiences I've had playing with my nieces and nephews or my little cousins and stuff when they were growing up. And a lot of times they have the big imagination. We're going to play burrito shop with Abuelita. And I always ask a lot of questions. This was pre-improv. And so one of the rules of improv is to not ask that many questions, but to just like and like add to the scene. And so I try to think of that too, because I know in the past, like dealing with kids, I'll be like, well, what's its name? And what does it do? And what do you do? And I ask a lot of questions. And so my goal and hope is when I do play with her that like, yes, there are questions, but also like, I've got my own ideas to add to your scene too. And let's play together instead of me just like following along. Does that make sense? Do you find yourself adding or just like asking a lot of questions?
Yeah, I've tried to stop myself from just assuming as well, because my daughter will draw something and I will assume like, oh, that's a dog, or you drew mommy or something like that. And instead, I try to use the phrase, tell me more, or tell me about it. And
I like
it
that.
gets them, instead of just, if you're like, did you draw the dog? Yes. It kind of ends the conversation. Whereas the improv mindset is more expand on it. So where I'm like, yeah, tell me about what you drew. And oh, it looks like you drew something in the sky. What is that? And even though you may infer something, it's amazing to hear what they come up with. And I think it's a better way of engaging in the conversation and inspiring them to think about things a little bit more as well.
I like that a lot. Tell me more. Yeah, instead of like, oh, what is it? Or something like, no, or assuming. Yeah, I like that a lot.
It's great for problem solving too, because instead of just telling them something, I like to ask, well, yeah, I know that you're frustrated about this. How could you fix that? Or what do you think your sister needs? Instead of, well, your sister needs you to say sorry or something like that. Them to think about those solutions. I think it also works in a business environment as well. I've had the privilege of being able to be in a more leadership position at my work. And so I try to use some of those same principles at home and at work of inspiring my colleagues and trying to take feedback too. And also whether I'm presenting a solution or coming up, like finding a problem, presenting a solution, like I try to do that, but then also try to make that a normal thing in my work environment as well. That's like, yeah, I want solution-oriented mindsets. Think outside the box, try to think for yourself. And I think that's great too, like when I'm able to have my daughters think in those kinds of ways. And it's really empowering, I think, for them too, because then they build the confidence like, yeah, I can do it. And then just reassure them in those choices.
Well, and one of the things that we've discussed about is how improv is all about making choices and taking risks on stage. And you said in one of our chats that you try to encourage your girls to take risks and be creative. And I love that. And I hope to model that as well. How do you do that for your girls? Just encourage them to take risks and be bold and be creative.
Yeah, I think one of the best ways to encourage that is to demonstrate it. And so this year, one of the things that was a goal for me was to get up on stage and do stand-up comedy. I've always been a fan of stand-up comedy. I know it's similar, but also different to the improv comedy world. It's still intimidating. I think both are probably intimidating.
I think stand-up is more intimidating because you're up there by yourself. Improv, you usually, unless you're doing a one-person show or a duo show, like you've got a team up there to support you if you're struggling. They're both hard, but stand-up is its own beast in itself.
Yeah, in a way, like you can at least prepare what you're going to say for stand-up. Which can be helpful, but at the same time, like 5 minutes can feel like a long time if you're doing that.
Or when it bombs, you're like, this is gold. Everyone's going to laugh at this. And then it bombs and you're like, okay, well, that was my best material too.
So that was a goal of mine. And yeah, like at the beginning of this year, I just was like, I'm putting it on the calendar. I found an open mic night at a local club near my house. And yeah, made it a thing. Like I told my girls, they're not old enough to go
Right.
to the club. Most of the stand-up jokes are not appropriate for
Nope,
many
not for a
ears, but
while.
especially not a 5-year-old. And yeah, like it was great to just get out and try it. And it was one of those things, like I don't have to now become a full-time stand-up comedian, even though that's what I told my wife. I'm like, well, I think I can quit my job and become a stand-up. She was like, absolutely not. um, but the fact that you can take risks, take calculated risks, and you can make choices without every choice being a life or death choice. And just by having that experience, it expands yourself and gives you confidence in other areas. So yeah, that's what I'd say. What's awesome too is my wife is a co-director at the nonprofit that she works at. And so we have conversations openly, like in front of our kids about like things that we're working on at work and those kinds of areas. And it's great too that, yeah, like my kids are seeing those things and hopefully it inspires them to know that they can go out and do hard things. They can put themselves in situations that may be uncomfortable as long as it's like appropriately safe. But there's a difference between not safe and just uncomfortable. And I think just for anyone to learn those things and allow themselves the space to take those risks, yeah, it will change your life.
I like that distinction between not safe and uncomfortable, and often they get combined and phrased as the same thing. But yeah, are you really not safe, or are you just feeling uncomfortable, and can you take that risk if you're just feeling uncomfortable? Certainly if you're not safe, like, listen to that. But I really appreciate that. I have to ask you, what's kind of the theme of some of your material? Do you do some dad jokes, or like how do you work on your material?
Yeah, a lot of the time the material just comes from like life. You know, my daughter says
Yeah.
something like the Abuelita story, and I'm like, that's hilarious. That's something that like just wrote itself, you know? Um,
Mhm.
Other times it's just observations. Like the other day, I came down to the kitchen in the morning. We had some old bananas the night before, and it had been days that these bananas had just been sitting on the counter. And as a dad, like you try to get your kids to eat bananas, they're not eating bananas. And then you're like, okay, this is getting gross. They're starting to turn brown and mushy. And I almost threw them away the night before. And when I came down that morning, it had turned into banana bread. And I
Oh.
realized that I can no longer have bananas that don't eventually turn into banana bread. So if you wait long enough, there's no such thing as a rotten banana, just, you know, future banana bread. So yeah, just kind of different lessons that I've learned along the way. Maybe they're not funny. Maybe it's just me that find them amusing. But for 5 minutes, you can get up in front of a bunch of strangers and share stories that you would normally just tell a 5-year-old. So at least, you
I
know, you're in
love
a
it.
room full of other adults and hopefully you'll get a chuckle.
Yeah, that's the promise of being funny is the hardest part in stand up for me. It's just, all right, I'm here to make you laugh. My limited experience of stand up, I went into this whole like mom thing because I was a pod mom before I was even expecting. And so it was very mom focused jokes. And it's just funny how that kind of manifested itself 6 months to a year later. I am now a mom. So I haven't done any open mic nights, but I'm impressed. And I've got to ask you too, just in terms of creative outlets and hobbies, you're a dad, a girl dad, a pod dad. How do you have time and find time to have those creative outlets and hobbies still?
I would say that you have to prioritize yourself just as much as you prioritize your spouse, your kids, and other obligations. You have to find the right balance. And I think that's the tricky thing. I wouldn't say that I have found necessarily the perfect balance. There's so many times where, you know, I wish I had done things differently, felt like I should have given my time to different areas. But I think it starts with recognizing that you also have things that you're passionate about, and you need to find ways to fill your own cup. And for
Mhm.
me, one of those things was like getting out and doing stand up one night a month. I haven't done it in a little while just because other things have come up, but it was one of those things where I said, like, at the start of the year, I wanted to commit to it. So I put it on our shared calendar. So I knew I couldn't back out as well. And then my wife knew, like, okay, next week, like Friday, I'm going out to do stand up for that night. And then in other ways, like my wife goes out with her friends, puts it on the calendar, brunch, and I'm watching the kids, or she'll go to a class or something. But yeah, finding time to do the things that you still love, because yes, kids take up a lot of time, but it's so easy to just fall into their entire schedule, school, sports, and just your entire weekend is devoted to your kids. And it's important to find things that you still enjoy to fill your cup. You'll be a better parent when you are energized. And then it also gives your kids that example that when they grow up, here's all the areas that they can still enjoy. And your life doesn't end when you become a parent. It just changes, but there's ways that you can balance that.
So still saying yes and to yourself. You say yes and to your kids, but also yes and to yourself and filling your cup as well. Maybe not as much. I don't think I'll be taking as many improv classes or stand-up classes as I was doing for the past 3 to 4 years. But I could still take a few. I could do them online. I can find different ways and outlets. And yeah, that means a lot. And like you said, if it's a priority, if it's important to you, you can find a way to make it happen. Matthew, what's next on your journey as a podcast host or a pod dad and also a girl dad? What's next?
Yeah, well, from the podcast, I had been able to meet so many other dads of daughters and build a community like through the podcast world. I've been super grateful for that. But then I wanted to also find a way to support like more of a local community. So I started doing dad-daughter events, and it started just in Denver. So I've had 3 events so far. The last one was at a local arcade. So we basically just took over this entire arcade. It was just dads and daughters for like 2 hours. I got some local sponsors, so that was super great. We did like a whole raffle, door prize kind of thing. Yeah, and that was super fun. I'd love to continue doing that. Things have just kind of been busy, but I'd love to kind of grow that area for the dad-daughter community.
My mind goes to all the ways that you could expand that and reach people outside of Denver and stuff. And of course, all that takes time, right? You get excited about these ideas. You can say yes and intermittently and just build it. But that's amazing that you've created this community from your podcast. What else? Keep going.
Yeah, I mean, it would be great to have Girl Dad Nation events like in other major cities, not just Denver.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm trying to like kind of lay the brickwork to make it feasible and then repeatable. But yeah, it's not quite. I've kind of just broken even financially on it, which makes it worth it to me because every event is a time that I'm taking my daughters to all these events. And so we're hanging out at the arcade, having a great time. I'm meeting other great friends there. So that's been super cool. But in terms of like the finances, it hasn't really like been at a point where it's made a whole lot of sense to continue devoting so much time to it. But we'll see. Things get there. But yeah, and then man, so many other things. Like I hope to launch a newsletter before the end of the year.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, which will probably either be like a weekly or a monthly Girl Dad Nation newsletter that talks about
weekly
events,
sounds
talks
intense.
about the podcast. I know weekly does sound intense.
And I don't mean to know, but
yeah,
yes, and you could do whatever. Like,
but yeah, each thing though, it can't be taken away too much from just my primary responsibility as a dad and husband. So that's just like anything, the balance. So yeah, that's kind of what's on the horizon, at least for Girl Dad Nation.
I love it. It's so much fun. It's such a creative outlet. I like to think that it will keep me going. I know I'm going to be busy in the next 2 months and lots of other primary responsibilities, but I love this kind of outlet and getting to meet cool people like you just from a Facebook group, a podcast Facebook group. Like you just don't know who you're going to meet, but you just have to be open to the opportunities and say yes and to the opportunities when they come up. I'm so grateful that we got to meet Matthew, and I'm sure our listeners are loving this and getting to do a little pod swap here. So, where and how can our listeners find out more about you?
Thanks. Yeah, Girl Dad Nation can be found. I have my new website, girldadnation.org, ORG. So that's probably the best way. I post my podcast there. I've also done video podcasts, which you can find on the website. And then I have an events tab there. I've got a tab for some merch. So you can get like Girl Dad Nation shirts and stuff. I hope to grow that too eventually. And then on Instagram, Twitter, now X, Facebook. Yeah, pretty much major social media places at Girl Dad Nation. So yeah, feel free to send me a message, follow me in all of those places. It goes directly to me. So I love hearing comments about the posts, about the podcast, and connecting with other people. So thanks.
Well, I will keep following. I love the episodes. I've listened to a bunch of the guest episodes you've had. Really liked the one with Bryce Kenny, who was a monster truck driver and fellow girl dad. That was really cool to hear. You have really awesome guests on. And I'll do a shout out to my editor who edits these podcasts, which actually is not me. I do have an editing team.
Oh, great.
I want to get the name Studio Pizza Productions or Pizza Party Productions. Sorry, Scott, I probably got that wrong, but I know my editor is a girl dad as well. Scott is a girl dad, so I hope he enjoyed listening to this episode too, as well as our other listeners. And Matthew, just thanks for coming on, sharing your experience as a girl dad. I know it's probably not easy and every day feels different and harder, but from the outside, it looks like you're doing a great job setting a great example for your girls and just allowing them to grow and thrive in this crazy world that we live in.
Dana, thanks so much for having me. This has been so fun. I've loved it. Love listening to your podcast. And yeah, thanks for encouraging everyone with the improvly speaking, yes, and attitude.
We shall meet at some point. I can't wait. I love Denver too. I visited once and it's an amazing community. So I can't wait for Girl Dad to expand to other cities. And when you make it out to LA, I will be there in full support with my daughter.
Awesome. Yeah. And congrats. Yeah. As a new mom of a daughter, and congrats to your husband for Girl Dad Nation. Welcome. That's so awesome. I wish you all the best. You're going to have such a great time. Not saying that you won't have sleepless nights, but you are in for just such a wonderful journey.
Thank you so much again, Matthew. Really appreciate it. Thanks again. And thank you for listening to today's episode. What a fun episode. It was a little different from the usual, maybe experienced speaker or improviser. Just getting to chat with a girl dad, a dad of 3 daughters who uses improv in his daily life. I assume and imagine every day of his life with his kids. And I love what Matthew is doing and creating with the Girl Dad Nation community. I love that he's hosted local events in the Denver area. I love the idea of expanding when the time's right. I imagine it's so hard right now when the girls are young, and he's got 3 under 5, which is crazy. I think at one point he almost had 3 under 3, maybe not quite that, but anyway, 3 under 5 is just amazing that he has any side projects and hobbies right now. I really appreciated what Matthew said about the improv mindset and parenting. And I know there's so much that goes into it, so I don't mean to come off as I'm simplifying parenting by just saying yes and to everything. Like, clearly as a parent, you have to say no, and you have to discipline your kids, and you have to find the right balance of playing and also being their parent, and also supporting them and also teaching them. I mean, there's so much that goes into it. So I am in no way, shape, or form trying to simplify this. And I also have no idea what to expect. The next few months, this whole rest of the year is just going to be wild for me. But I'm comforted by knowing that I do have some of these skills to help me in my parenting journey. saying yes and listening, even though baby can't talk, really listening to her cues and what she's showing and what she needs. I read and I hear that it's even harder when they're toddlers, right? Because, with a baby, you kind of have an idea of what they need if they're on a schedule or something. But sometimes toddlers can't always tell you what they want. They may just have a tantrum or may act out, but it's for a different reason. And they're not able to really vocalize that. I guess a baby isn't either, but it gets a lot more complicated when they're older. And anyway, I'm in for a really fun journey. I didn't mention it in talking with Matthew, but one of my mottos and mantras around parenting, or at least this time in my life and being pregnant and getting ready for baby to come, is uncertainty is my friend. And that's a big tenet of improv, is just embracing uncertainty and being okay with mistakes and following the fun and just allowing for anything to come up and trusting that you'll be able to handle it. And so I've really been repeating this phrase of uncertainty is my friend, uncertainty is my friend. And I recorded a whole solo episode about it. I'll probably release it soon in conjunction with this one or close to it. But that motto has really helped me to just let go of some anxiety and be okay with whatever comes up and trusting my skills and knowing that I can handle it. I mean, that relates to everything in life. It relates to public speaking. It relates to parenting. It relates to our jobs. It relates to everything. Uncertainty is our friend, and allowing ourselves to be flexible and also playful in that, and knowing that we can have a balance of freedom and structure and also be creative. I think, and I hope my improv skills will help me through this time. It won't be easy. It definitely won't be easy, but it'll be very helpful. And so I really appreciate Matthew coming on and sharing his experience as a dad. We were talking after we hit the stop button, and he mentioned that he has a solo episode. He calls it his hacks episode, where he gives tips on different parenting things. And he has an episode about cloth diapers that he's put out recently. And I was like, oh, that's a great topic. And I will be checking that episode out. So I encourage you, if you are a girl dad, if you know a girl dad, I mean, honestly, it's also helpful for moms. His wife Becca's come on a few episodes. It's a really helpful podcast. And while I believe that there should be so much support for moms out there, and there is support and it's growing, I mean, we could use more. There also needs to be support for the dads out there too. I had a previous guest on, Jim Young, who talked about mental health for men specifically. And I think that's so important. I see it in a lot of men I know. With my girlfriends, we talk very vulnerably about mental health issues. And I see sometimes with my guy friends and even people I'm closer to who are males, that it doesn't come as freely, being that vulnerable and just saying that you need help, either mental health or parenting help or whatever it is. And I'm very much generalizing here, but I do love giving dads some support and tools that they need in order to help their kids and also help their wives. This is a huge time in everyone's lives, and I just appreciate Matthew growing this community and making it his own. It's so cool to see. I'm so glad that our paths crossed, and I'm so glad he came on this episode. One of the things that came up in this episode, I really liked how Matthew had the distinction between safety and feeling uncomfortable. And I know, probably as a new mom, that I will be very overprotective, safety-wise. I'll want to make sure that she doesn't get hurt, but she's going to fall and she's going to cry and she's going to get hurt. But trying to model that behavior of, yes, I'm uncomfortable and I'm going to do it anyway. And I say uncomfortable in the sense of like, I'm scared. I'm scared of what I'm about to do. I'm scared to get up on stage. I'm scared to sing and do musical improv. I'm scared to do public speaking. I'm scared to do this interview. I'm scared to do whatever I want to do in my life, but it's scary. And I'm going to do it anyway. And that, I think, is so powerful that you can model that for your kids and hopefully they see it and notice it, after a while and spending time with you. And that is one of my goals as a mom, is just to be scared and to do it anyway. And I imagine that will manifest itself in many ways. One, in just parenting, but also, with the business. It's a scary leap to go full-time in the business or to dedicate more time or to do what I want, even though I have all these new priorities, but to do it anyway. So I want to ask you to really think about it and think, what is something that you've been scared of doing and felt really uncomfortable, but you can do it anyway? You can try it. You can do it. And also, I'm thinking ahead to something you can do. What is something that you were scared of, but you did it anyway? And then you noticed, oh, it wasn't that terrible, or it wasn't as hard as I thought. And then maybe you can channel that into the next thing that you find uncomfortable, but you still want to do it because it lights you up, it brings you joy, it brings alignment, you just feel like yourself when you do it, but it is scary to still do. And so how can you say yes and to that scary thing? And also distinguishing between safety. I feel not safe, either physically safe, emotionally safe, whatever it is. I don't feel safe in this situation. And saying yes and to yourself in that I'm going to say no to what makes me feel unsafe, but I'm going to say yes to this thing that is scary, but will mean a lot if I do it. Yeah, it's a very powerful question there. Lots of nuances there, but I hope you're having some things come up for you and kind of realizing that you can do hard things, just like I can do hard things and be a mom. I can't believe baby girl is going to be here in 2 months or less or more. I don't know. Around 2 months. And I keep saying baby girl because I don't have a name yet. We haven't decided on a name. I think we will wait until we see her to make the official call. So right now she is baby girl or baby G. And I'm sure she'll have plenty of silly, fun little nicknames too once she's here. I hope you enjoyed this episode today. If you had anything come up for you or resonate with you about the episode or about the safety and uncomfortableness and anything you want to share, please reach out. Again, reach out to Matthew at Girl Dad Nation on all the social medias. If you're feeling inspired by his community and what he does, you can also reach out to me. I'm on Instagram at Improvly Speaking. On LinkedIn, I'm at Dana Gowan. And you can find out all about my services and offerings at improvryspeaking.com. And also, I want to add one thing too. Matthew and I met through the Buzzsprout Facebook group. I threw out a question about podcast merch. And I do want to mention that I have a store online for Podmom merch. So if you know anyone or you yourself are a podcast mom, meaning that you have a podcast and you identify as a female, then congrats, you're a pod mom, because listen, this podcast project is definitely a major undertaking. I am proud of this podcast like it is a child. I am growing and nurturing this podcast, and I am a proud pod mom. And so if you are looking for t-shirts, notebooks, magnets, sweatshirts, and more, you can go to my merch store that's at improveslyspeaking.threadless.com. That's THREADLESS.com. It's in the show notes as well, but please check that out and enjoy your Pod Mom merch. If you listen to one of Matthew's episodes, he likes to end his episodes by saying, "Go out and be a dad." And I will end this episode like I end all my episodes by saying thank you for listening and supporting Improvly Speaking. Go out and flex your creative thinking. I'll talk to you next time.